In 2020, a 3-meter scale model wobbled through German airspace. It looked like nothing that had ever carried passengers. No tube, no traditional wings, just a giant flying V that seemed to defy everything we know about aircraft design. The test flight lasted just minutes, but those minutes proved something that engineers had debated for decades. This shape could actually fly. Here is the problem: it could not fly straight. The model suffered from Dutch roll, a violent wobbling motion where the aircraft rocks side to side while yawing simultaneously. Without advanced computer software constantly correcting its path, this thing would have spiraled into the ground. A human pilot alone could never control it. But this was not a failure. This was the point. The Flying V is not just a new aircraft design. It is a complete reimagining of what an airplane should be. And if its creators are right, it could burn 20% less fuel than a Boeing 777. In an industry where margins are measured in pennies per seat mile, 20% is not an improvement. It is a revolution. The story of how we got here starts with a simple question that has haunted aviation engineers for a century. Why are we still flying tubes? Every commercial aircraft you have ever flown on follows the same basic formula: a cylindrical fuselage, wings bolted to the sides, engines hanging underneath, tail at the back. This design dates back to the 1930s. We have refined it endlessly, made it lighter, made it stronger, made it more efficient, but we have never questioned its fundamental architecture. Here is the dirty secret of conventional aircraft design. The fuselage is dead weight. That long tube carrying passengers creates enormous drag. It pushes through the air like a battering ram, and it generates zero lift, none. The wings have to work overtime just to keep this heavy cylinder airborne. Think about what that means. Every flight you take, the engines burn thousands of gallons of fuel just to drag a giant metal tube through the sky. The tube itself contributes nothing to keeping the aircraft aloft. It is pure passenger container, pure drag, pure inefficiency. Engineers have known this for decades. They have dreamed of alternatives: blended wing bodies, flying wings, concepts where every surface generates lift, where there is no dead weight, where the entire aircraft works together as one aerodynamic unit. But those dreams always died in the wind tunnel, or in the boardroom, or in the certification office, until a student intern changed everything. In 2014, a young engineer named Justus Beynad was completing an internship at Airbus in Hamburg. His thesis assignment seemed straightforward enough: explore unconventional aircraft configurations. Most interns produce forgettable reports that gather dust in corporate archives. Beynad produced something that would consume billions in research funding and potentially reshape aviation forever. His concept was elegantly simple. Take the blended wing body idea that engineers had studied for decades, but instead of one massive flying wing, create two wings joined at the front, a V shape. Passengers would sit inside the wings themselves. The cabin would spread across the entire lifting surface. Every inch of the aircraft would generate lift. The numbers were extraordinary. Simulations suggested fuel savings of 20% or more compared to conventional designs. Same passenger capacity as an Airbus A350. Dramatically lower operating costs. Airlines would save millions per aircraft per year. Airbus executives saw the thesis and did something unusual. They took it seriously. Within years, the concept had moved from student project to joint research program. KLM Royal Dutch Airlines signed on as a partner. Delft University of Technology began building scale models. The Flying V had escaped the intern's notebook and entered the real world. But here is where physics starts fighting back. Remember that Dutch roll problem from the test flight? That was just the beginning. The Flying V faces engineering challenges that would make most aerospace companies walk away. Let us start with what I call the soda can problem. There is a reason almost every pressurized aircraft is a cylinder. When you pressurize a cabin at cruising altitude, the internal pressure wants to expand outward. A circular cross-section distributes this pressure evenly. The forces balance perfectly, just like a soda can. The Flying V has an oval cross-section, flattened, wide, completely unnatural for pressurization. When you pump air into this shape, it does not stay flat. It wants to balloon outward into a circle. The cabin walls try to round themselves out. This creates massive structural stress at the corners and edges. To stop the aircraft from literally exploding at altitude, engineers have to add heavy internal reinforcements, ribs, braces, structural members that add weight. And here is the cruel irony. That extra weight threatens to eat up exactly the fuel savings the design promised in the first place. Then there is the roller coaster problem. In a conventional tube aircraft, all passengers sit relatively close to the aircraft's center of rotation. When the plane banks into a turn, everyone experiences roughly the same forces. The sensation is mild, barely noticeable for most travelers. The Flying V spreads passengers across the entire wingspan. Some seats are 20 meters from the aircraft's center. When this aircraft banks, passengers on the outer edges experience dramatically different forces than those near the center. The high side of the wing feels like you are being lifted out of your seat, negative G's. The low side feels like you are being crushed into the cushion, positive G's. Every turn becomes a theme park ride. Every course correction triggers motion sickness. Engineers are still trying to solve this fundamental physics problem. Some suggest limiting bank angles. Others propose active seat systems that compensate for the motion. None of these solutions are proven at scale, and we have not even talked about airports yet. The aviation industry spent over a century building infrastructure for tube-shaped aircraft. Every gate, every jet bridge, every maintenance hangar, every piece of ground support equipment, all designed for long, narrow fuselages with doors in predictable locations. The Flying V throws all of this away. Its wingspan is comparable to conventional wide bodies, but its shape is completely incompatible with standard jet bridges. The doors are in weird locations. The engines are mounted at the rear. Ground crew cannot reach the aircraft using existing equipment. Remember what happened to the Airbus A380. Part of its failure was airport resistance. Gates had to be modified, runways had to be reinforced, terminals had to be reconfigured. Airlines loved the aircraft's economics on paper, but airports hated the infrastructure costs. The Flying V is worse. It does not just need bigger gates, it needs completely redesigned passenger handling systems. Some analysis suggests passengers would need to take buses to the tarmac for every flight. Forever, no airport wants to spend hundreds of millions redesigning terminals for a single aircraft type. The A380 proved that. The Flying V demands even more dramatic changes, but here is the nuance that makes this story fascinating. Some of these problems might become advantages in disguise. Consider the hydrogen question. Liquid hydrogen is widely seen as aviation's future fuel. It produces zero carbon emissions when burned. The technology exists today. Airlines are desperate to decarbonize, but hydrogen has a massive problem. It takes up 4 times more volume than jet fuel for the same energy content. Conventional tube aircraft simply do not have room for giant hydrogen tanks without removing passenger seats. The economics collapse. The Flying V might be the only aircraft design capable of making hydrogen work. Its wings are incredibly thick because people sit inside them. This creates massive internal volume that could hold bulky hydrogen tanks without sacrificing a single passenger seat. The same unusual shape that creates pressurization nightmares could become the key to zero-emission flight. Then there is the cargo question. Several industry analysts point out that the Flying V's unusual shape might limit cargo capacity. Standard shipping pallets are designed for conventional belly holds. They might not fit in the V-shaped cargo compartments. This seems like a deal breaker. Airlines generate enormous revenue from belly cargo. Losing that profit stream could erase all fuel savings. But hydrogen changes this calculation too. If the aircraft uses hydrogen fuel stored in the wing volume, and if that hydrogen costs less than jet fuel, the cargo revenue might become irrelevant. The economics shift completely. None of this is certain, all of it is speculative, but the possibility exists. And in aviation, possibility is enough to justify billions in research spending. Let us talk about what has actually been proven so far. The July 2020 test flight in Germany was real. The scale model flew. It demonstrated that the basic aerodynamic concept works. The aircraft can take off. It can can fly, it can land. These are not trivial achievements for such a radical design, but the Flite also revealed limitations. The Dutch roll instability required constant computer correction. The model could not maintain stable flight without artificial assistance. This means the production aircraft would be what engineers call inherently unstable, unflyable by humans alone. This is not unprecedented. Modern fighter jets are often designed unstable to improve maneuverability. The computer corrects thousands of times per second. Passengers never notice, but certifying an unstable passenger aircraft through the FAA and EASA will require years of additional testing and entirely new regulatory frameworks. The current certification rules were written for tubes. They assume conventional control surfaces, conventional stability characteristics, conventional failure modes. The Flying V violates all of these assumptions. Delft University estimates commercial service is still 15 to 20 years away at minimum, and that assumes everything goes perfectly. No major technical setbacks, no funding gaps, no regulatory delays. In aviation development, nothing ever goes perfectly. Meanwhile, the competition is not standing still. Airbus continues developing its own zero-E hydrogen concepts. Boeing is investing in sustainable aviation fuel. Engine manufacturers are pushing efficiency improvements on conventional designs. Every year that passes, the Flying V's 20% advantage shrinks slightly as competitors improve. But here is what makes this story worth watching. The Flying V represents something bigger than one aircraft program. It represents a willingness to question fundamental assumptions, to ask whether the tube we have been flying for 90 years is actually the best answer. The most radical change in aviation history did not come from a boardroom full of executives. It came from a student's homework assignment that was so brilliant that two of the world's largest aviation organizations spent billions investigating it. Most breakthrough ideas die in obscurity. They get filed away and forgotten. The Flying V survived because someone recognized its potential, because institutions were willing to fund radical thinking, because the industry desperately needs new solutions to the carbon problem. Will it ever carry passengers? Honestly, probably not in its current form. The engineering challenges are immense. The certification timeline is measured in decades. The infrastructure requirements might prove insurmountable, but the ideas it represents will survive. The concept of distributed lift, the integration of passengers into the wing structure, the potential for hydrogen compatibility. These innovations will influence whatever aircraft actually replaces the current generation of wide bodies. The Flying V might never fly commercially, but it has already changed how engineers think about what an aircraft can be. That might be its real legacy. Not a revolutionary airliner, but a revolutionary way of thinking about flight itself. What do you think? Would you fly in a V-shaped aircraft if it meant cutting emissions by 20%? Or does the rollercoaster banking and radical design make you want to stick with conventional tubes forever? If you want to understand more about how aviation technology is evolving, hit subscribe. The next generation of Flite is being designed right now, and it looks nothing like what came before.